Hello, my name is Adam Hoswinkle. This presentation covers my research into the development of Orientalism concerning the Ottoman Empire's Imperial Harem. This research is an expansion of Edward Said's theory of Orientalism. As this research shows, Orientalism developed over the 16th and 17th centuries as the European Ottoman power dynamics shifted. Orientalist discourse defined European perceptions of the Ottoman and broader Islamic world for centuries, prevalent today. By targeting the Ottomans' exclusive institution of the Imperial Harem, the West could conjure perceptions of Ottoman sexuality, morality, politics, and slavery from imagination. Orientalist discernments of the Imperial Harem defined others to Europeans by exhibiting what Europeans were not. The Ottoman Empire was one of the mightiest and long-lasting dynasties in world history. This Islamic-run superpower ruled large areas of the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and North Africa for more than 600 years. While Western Europeans generally view them as a threat, many historians regard the Ottoman Empire as a source of excellent regional stability, security, and for significant achievements in the arts, science, religion, and culture. Orientalism is a theory developed and published by scholar Edward Said in his text Orientalism from 1978. Orientalism is a perspective that distinguishes the Orient from Western civilization. The Orient of which Said writes refers to what is commonly known as the Middle East, while the West refers to the imperial powers of Europe and the United States. Said contended that Orientalism is, quote, a Western style for dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient, end quote. Orientalism eradicates any chance for accurate understandings of peoples and geographies that are different. Orientalism takes away from the reality of these cultures and conjures stereotypes that replace the truth. Those deemed Oriental were given such a label by people outside the so-called Orient. The origins of such a view were to undermine the peoples there, to exploit and colonize those deemed naturally subaltern. Orientalism influenced and coincided with how the West understood the Ottomans. The invincible Turk narrative would eventually lose its place in European minds, as European imperial power would rise in the centuries after the Renaissance. The Ottoman Imperial Harem was a secluded political institution. Female palace slaves were given new identities and education and made a utility of the Ottoman state. Though their lives did not end with enslavement, they became assimilated into the elite stratum of Ottoman society. Female palace slaves were unfree, but the harem itself presented occupational opportunities for these women. As palace slaves, they were provided for by the Ottoman state through a new identity, education, healthcare, and salaries to support themselves. The experience in the harem for female palace slaves was only one phase in their lives. Once their service in the harem ended, many women's crucial ties to the imperial palace continued through patronage relationships. While it may be fair to view these women's lives as simply making the best of their situation, harem women's privileged position granted them agency during service and even after. This illuminates how Orientalist discourse detracts from their reality. These women could and did rise to immense importance in Ottoman society. Women of the imperial harem could and did rise to immense importance in Ottoman society. They secured the continuation of the dynasty, created and maintained patronage relationships, accrued wealth, and engaged in philanthropy. This research does not aim to detract from the reality of unfreedom that these women faced, but to show how Westerners misinterpreted their situations through the lens of Orientalism. The institution of slavery possessed immensely different functions in Christendom than in the Islamic world. Slaves were a crucial element of Ottoman society. They were not merely free labor, but played pivotal roles in Ottoman households, social conflicts, politics, and had religiously sanctioned protection. Being shown depict a level of equivalency that Europeans attributed to the Ottomans in this period. The harem women are depicted similarly to European noblewomen. During the Renaissance, pre-colonial Europe perceived the Ottomans as a force to be reckoned with and depicted them as such. In 1683, the Second Siege of Vienna by the Ottomans stood as a watershed moment in Europeans' perception of the Ottomans. This event is when a tilt in the balance of power led Europeans to view the formidable foe, the Ottomans, as weakening. Lady Mary Wortley Montagu was an English noblewoman who married the English ambassador to the Ottoman court, Edward Wortley Montagu. As a woman, when traveling to the Ottoman Empire, Lady Mary received far more access to the harem women than any male who previously traveled to or wrote of the Ottoman harem. Lady Mary's letters, which were widely circulated after her death in 1762, described her experience in the Ottoman harem. And although the content is relatively objective, many Orientalist elements such as opulence are cherry-picked from Lady Mary's account and portrayed in later Orientalist artwork. It seems apparent that the formation of an Orientalist motif for artworks in the 19th century took what was similar between travel accounts from the previous century, the Orientalist imagery. The first example pertinent to Orientalism in the harem is Jean-Jules Antoine Leconte de Noy's painting titled La Esclave de Blanche, translated as The White Slave. The painting depicts the Circassian palace slave of the harem, enslaved Circassian women were often chosen for the imperial harem. This depiction aligns with the Orientalist notion that women of the harem are merely sexual objects, always ready to be of use to the sultan they serve. The Circassian palace slave in this scene is barely clothed, indicating her promiscuous nature, with the spread of food and drink, enjoying the luxuries of her exotic world, smoking tobacco while she relaxes near a bath. One accuracy captured in this artwork is that the African women in the background appear to be doing more laborious tasks. This was true in the Ottoman world, as Circassian women were to be in the harem, while African women held more menial roles. The reason that this is important is that it shows that the artist was imaginative about the Circassian woman because he could not understand the Ottomans to treat her as any more than a concubine. The portrayal of African women as domestic servants likely aligns with his own worldview, where African women were subject to similar roles. This painting showcases the artist's lack of understanding as to the reality of harem women in the Ottoman Empire, and it also showcases the liberties that artists will take in their depiction. Like many Orientalist painters, Eugene Delacroix painted images of the Ottoman harem women from imagination. Delacroix's Orient in this painting is violent, despotic, and sexually charged. Delacroix did not visit the alleged Orient or Algeria until more than a decade later. In the 1830s, France had begun colonizing parts of Algeria, alluding to the rise in depicting the Orient as Oriental rather than realistic representations based upon first-hand experiences. Orientalist artwork and literature, in many instances, was based upon fabrications to portray the land and peoples that were being colonized as others. Said argues that the creation of Orientalist paintings relies upon previous references and narratives about the Orient rather than relying upon the Orient itself. Delacroix is a prime example of this. Once in Algeria, Delacroix utilized models in a studio instead of actual Ottoman women or settings to create paintings that would quench the thirst for the Orient of their imagination. A desire for Orientalist artworks in Europe is prevalent through the critiques of artist Henriette Brown's work, A Visit, a Harem Interior from 1860. Henriette as a woman gained much more access to and with women in the Ottoman world than male travelers, similar to Mary Montagu in the previous century. Henriette Brown's work was a more progressive example of what Orientalist artwork could be. This artwork lacks opulence, wealth, sex, and instead attempts to capture a more realistic depiction of the harem and its women. Two critiques of Brown's work support the validity of European Orientalist preference. Critic Oliver Merson saw Brown's depictions of the Orient as a mistake, rather than an alternative and perhaps more realistic perspective. Leon Lagrange, who attributed Brown's lack of depictions of hypersexuality and languorous, partially clothed odalisques in the harem to sexual naivete. These critiques show the demand for Orientalist art because an attempt to capture a more realistic representation, based upon experience in the Ottoman world with harem women, obtains rejection in favor of the Orientalist fantasy. It gave them a sense of moral high ground. It justified the colonialist and imperialist actions surrounding the Ottoman world because these people are understood as backward, requiring Western influence to be civilized. Saadet Odsen from Bogazici University conducted a seminar in 2017 with her students in which they examined photographs from the late 19th and early 20th century of harem women. Once viewing the photographs, neither the students nor the professor initially could identify the women at all. There was nothing in the photographs that indicated to them the women's social status or cultural allegiance. These photographs and Otsen's seminar show how ingrained the Orientalist imagery has become. These photographs were of harem women. Even in the 21st century, as the seminar was conducted in 2017, the understandings of the Ottoman Imperial Harem remain one of a sexualized, exotic, luxurious, opulent nature, the opposite of what these photographs portray. This painting here is of one of the eunuchs of the Imperial Harem. The eunuchs were essentially the guards of the harem that forbade people from both entering or leaving. They were the only people allowed to cross between this sacred space. They were extremely high educated, they were viewed as sacred beings, and they held a lot of power in the Ottoman Empire. However, Orientalist artwork portrays them as extremely violent, forbidding outsiders from access to the inners of the harem. Edward Said's Orientalism is a landmark text that exposes how the West has viewed and acted towards the peoples and places of the world that are non-Western. Said delivers a very well-supported theory. However, as this research has demonstrated, examining the Ottoman-European relationship in the centuries preceding colonialist Britain and France is necessary to understand how Orientalist discourse took shape. Once Orientalist discourse captured European fascination, the harem served as a pivotal institution to otherize Ottoman culture. Orientalism in the harem has shaped the West's understanding of the Ottoman Empire and continues to shape Western understandings of the Middle East. The previous Orientalist discourse has not been critiqued or replaced, but instead perpetuated to undermine non-Western peoples and fulfill imperialist operations there. Popular media continues to draw on Orientalist discourse to perpetuate the Middle East of imagination, to keep the Orient a real place. If you enjoyed this research presentation in the format of a video, might I recommend checking out the University of Texas at San Antonio's College of Liberal and Fine Arts graduate journal, Beyond Boundaries, Mastering the Liberal Arts. This research essay has been selected to be published in the 2023 edition and will be available there early 2023. Please feel free to check it out. It is a graduate student journal. There is no money being generated from this. It's purely for academic purposes. If you enjoyed this, please check it out.